You ever get an email so cold it feels like a slap in the face? That was me, 7:14 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday in Portland. Subject line, clear your desk by end of day. Message, HR will handle your exit paperwork. We need employees who prioritize the company's needs. Thank you for your service. No, sorry for your loss. No face-to-face talk. Just, you're done. 3 days. That's how long I'd been gone. 3 damn days to bury my father. And mind you, this wasn't some last-minute vacation. My boss, Peter Crane, had personally approved my bereavement leave the week before. Name's Nick Hall. Was the senior operations manager at Northway Freight Solutions. 5 years of busting my back, running overtime shifts, covering for everybody else's screw-ups. Built the top-performing team in the entire Northwest Division. Didn't matter. To them, I was just another body to throw out when it got inconvenient. Sat there for a second. The office dead quiet except for the hum of old fluorescent lights. The whole building smelled like wet carpet and stale coffee. Perfect background for the funeral of my career. I leaned back, my old leather chair groaning, and stared at the screen. Maybe if I blinked hard enough, the email would disappear. Spoiler alert. It didn't. Instead of blowing up, instead of marching into Pete's glass-walled office and flipping his IKEA desk over, I did something way worse. I smiled. Because right then, something in me broke loose. Not sadness, not even anger. Strategy. First move? Screenshot that email and send it to my personal account. Second move? Pack my stuff. Nice and slow. Like I had all the time in the world. Every photo frame, every little team award, every stupid coffee mug. Even the half-dead ficus my team gave me for Christmas. It all went into the box. A 5-year career, boxed up in under 20 minutes. Around 8 a.m. the early bird started, drifting in. Casey from accounting passed by and froze mid-step when she saw me packing. Nick, what's going on? I shrugged. Guess filing quarterly reports was more important than burying my old man. She just stared at me, mouth opening and closing like a fish. That was my cue to keep packing. No drama, no yelling. Let the silence do the talking. By the time 9 a.m. hit, half the floor had figured out what was happening. People kept sneaking glances at me like I was some ghost walking the halls. I didn't mind. I wanted them to remember this. And then, like clockwork, Pete finally decided to show his ratty little face. He strutted over, all fake smiles and that tight navy suit he wore to make himself look taller. Nick, he said, hands folded in front, him like some mall cop. I wish this could have been handled with a bit more discretion. Discretion. Right. The guy who fired me via email was worried about discretion. I didn't even blink. You worried about appearances, Pete? After what? You pulled? He coughed, looked around like he was hoping nobody was listening. This wasn't personal. Business needs shift rapidly. We need adaptable team members. Your absence was... I cut him off. Don't finish that sentence unless you want me to put this whole place on blast. I kept my voice low but sharp enough to shave the skin off his smug face. For the first time since I started there, Pete Crane didn't have a comeback. He just stood there, his face twitching, probably wondering how fast he could sprint back. To HR without looking like a coward. Human Resources is expecting you, he mumbled before speed walking away like a raccoon caught stealing trash. I chuckled to myself, packed the last stapler, snapped the box shut, walked down the hall every step louder than the last in the dead-still office. At the HR desk, Barb from HR gave me the look. You know the one. Half sympathy, half please don't sue us. She slid the paperwork across the desk like it was a bomb she didn't want to touch. 2 weeks severance, non-disparagement agreement, non-compete for 6 months in a 300-mile radius. Cute. You mind telling me why? I asked. Not because I needed an answer, I already knew, but because I wanted to hear her try. Barb shifted in her seat. Management felt your priorities weren't aligned with the company's current needs during a critical operational period. Translation, you made us look bad by grieving like a human being. I signed the papers with a flourish. Didn't even bother to read the fine print. What were they gonna do, fire me twice? As I left the building, the rain finally stopped. Fitting. My phone buzzed. First one text, then another, then another. Casey, Jared, Marcus, even James from legal, who normally wouldn't look up from his computer unless the building was literally on fire. All of them furious. All of them asking, what can we do? Where are you going next? How can we help? I smiled for real this time. Because if Pete Crane thought he was rid of me, he hadn't seen anything yet. I didn't go home that day. I drove straight across town, through the dripping gray streets of Portland, straight to a little cafe on Hawthorne where the Wi-Fi was decent and the coffee was strong enough to strip paint. I had work to do. First step, I pulled up LinkedIn and changed my status to open to work. Second step, called an old friend. Rick Sanders, VP of Ironclad Transport, Northway's nastiest competitor. We hadn't talked in months, but Rick picked up on the second ring. Nick Hall? Man, I heard about what those clowns pulled. You all right? I'm better now, I said, voice low. You still looking for someone to head up your Northwest ops? There was a pause. Then Rick laughed. You free for lunch tomorrow? And just like that, the plan clicked into place. I wasn't just gonna move on. I was gonna bleed Northway dry, one client and one employee at a time. By the time I finished my third coffee, I'd fired off a dozen texts to my old team. No pressure, no promises. Just, if you want out, there's another option coming soon. Keep your heads down. The replies came back fast. Hell yes. Tell me when and where. I'm done with Pete's crap. It felt good. Not petty, not revengey, just right. If Northway wanted loyal soldiers, maybe they shouldn't have treated us like janitors cleaning up after their bad decisions. That night, I sat in my truck, watching the rain beat up on the windshield. Thought about my old man. He spent his whole life working the docks, never missed a shift. Died with a busted back and a pension that barely paid the electric bill. I remembered him telling me once, Nick, loyalty's a two-way street. If they ain't loyal to you, you owe 'em nothing. I owed Northway nothing. The next morning I met Rick at a steakhouse downtown. He was already halfway through a beer by the time I slid into the booth. You look like hell, he said cheerfully. Appreciate it, I said, stealing a fry off his plate. All right, Rick said, cutting straight to it. Here's the deal. We're expanding our freight division up and down the coast. I need a director. You'll run your own show, build your team, bring your book of business, name your number. I sat back, arms folded. One condition. Rick raised an eyebrow. I want the freedom to bring in whoever I want, no HR hoops, no politics. My team, my way. Rick grinned. Done. We shook on it, old school. Just like that, I had a new job. Better title, bigger salary, full control. And I wasn't even officially unemployed for 24 hours. Meanwhile, back at Northway, things were starting to crack. Casey texted me that afternoon. Pete's losing it. Henderson account freaking out. They want you on next quarter's call. Nobody told them you're gone. I almost felt bad. Almost apparently my unimportant work had included finalizing Henderson's $2.3 million renewal, managing the Westbrook project rollout, and training 2 green hires who were now wandering the halls like lost puppies. A weekend, and guess who didn't know the passwords to half the systems I built? Yeah, Pete Crane. Good luck, buddy. By Thursday, my team started slipping away. First was Marcus, our data analyst. He texted, handed in my notice. No way I'm staying without you. Then came Lisa from client services. Then Jared, my right-hand logistics guy. Each one a gut punch to Pete's crumbling empire. One after another, like dominoes tipping over. Friday morning, Rick called me again. You ready to make it official? Yeah, I said. All right, we're announcing your hire on Monday. I want Northway to wake up to a fucking nightmare. I couldn't stop smiling. Oh, and the best part? Rick was greenlighting me to start poaching clients immediately. Because turns out, in Oregon, non-competes are about as enforceable as a kindergarten promise. Northway couldn't stop me. Not legally, not practically. Saturday morning, while Pete was probably stress-chugging coffee and wondering why nobody could find the Wilson invoices, I was sitting in my new office downtown. Big windows, corner view, actual working espresso machine. No flickering lights, no Pete Crane. Rick walked in with a beer in each hand. To new beginnings, he said, grinning wide. I clinked bottles with him. We both knew this wasn't just business. It was war, and I was about to win it. Because Monday morning, Northway's biggest account, Henderson Freight, was about to get a very interesting email. From me. Subject line, let's talk about better service. Monday morning hit like a thunderclap. While Pete was probably sipping his burnt office coffee, trying to duct tape together what was left of his department, I was downtown in my brand new office. Fresh suit, clean desk, hot espresso, firing. Off emails. First target, Henderson Freight, Northway's cash cow. I knew exactly what would hit their nerves. Subject, let's talk about service that values you. Short, sharp, personal. I wasn't selling them a dream. I was reminding them of the nightmare they were stuck in. By 9:12 a.m., Henderson's regional director had already replied, Nick, what happened? Can we set up a call today? I smiled and sipped my coffee. Oh, we could set up a call, all right. And when we did, they practically begged to move their $2.3 million account over to Ironclad under my management. It didn't stop there. By noon, 3 more former clients had reached out after seeing Ironclad's slick little announcement that I was now running their Northwest division. Each one had the same story. We didn't know you were gone. Nobody told us. The new guy is clueless. We're thinking about making a change, and each time I kept my tone warm and professional, while inwardly grinning like a wolf who just found an unguarded flock. Meanwhile, back at the circus tent known as Northway, Pete was running out of hands to plug the leaks. Casey from accounting shot me a text around 2 p.m. Emergency meeting called. Pete looks like he hasn't slept in days. Henderson's bailing. Westbrook's pissed. Word is Paula from corporate's flying in tomorrow. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. The whole house of cards was tilting. And I hadn't even touched the biggest domino yet. See, I knew something Pete didn't. I wasn't the only one plotting an escape. Jared, Lisa, Marcus, even quiet little Sophie in compliance. They were all done with Northway's crap. And they weren't just quitting. They were lining up to follow me. That evening we met at a quiet brewery across town. No company badges, no drama, just 7 pissed-off former Northway employees sitting around a table, laughing like we hadn't. In years, Jared raised his glass. To Pete, he said with a smirk. May his spreadsheets forever crash. Everyone cracked up. Then he got serious. We want in, Nick. You build it. We'll help run it. Lisa nodded. I already sent my resume. To Rick, Ironclad's lucky to have you. Sophie chimed in quietly. I gave my notice today. Pete didn't even argue. He just stared at the wall. I leaned back in my chair, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Real, earned, loyal power. Not because I barked orders. Because they believed in me, because they chose me. All right, I said, raising my glass. Let's burn it down, the right way. Tuesday morning at Northway was a bloodbath. 6 resignation letters back to back. No notice. Effective immediately. By 10 a.m. Casey texted, Pete locked himself in his office. Corporate's here. Paula looks pissed. Even better, turns out Sophie had kept detailed records of every time Pete violated company policy. Micromanaging, ignoring safety procedures, fudging client reports. All neat and tidy in a nice little file she handed straight to HR. Oh, and cherry on top? Word got out that Henderson Freight wasn't just leaving. They were taking 3 other partner companies with them. All because Pete decided attending my father's funeral was somehow unprofessional. Guess karma's faster than UPS overnight. Meanwhile, at Ironclad, things were buzzing. Rick greenlit every hire I recommended. Within a week, I had rebuilt 80% of my old team. Stronger, meaner, smarter. And the clients? They came pouring in like water through a busted dam. First Henderson, then Westbrook, then Ralston Supply. Each one sending polite but deadly emails to Northway. Thank you for your service. Effective immediately, we're moving. Our business to Ironclad Transport Systems. I heard Pete tried to explain it away to corporate. Tried to say it was market conditions and unforeseeable turnover. Yeah, sure. Unforeseeable. Like a hurricane after ignoring storm warnings for 2 weeks. By the end of the month, Northway's entire Northwest division was hemorrhaging money. They started slashing budgets, laying off staff, freezing new hires. And Pete? Good old Pete Crane? He disappeared. Rumor had it he took an extended leave of absence. Translation. They shoved him out the door so fast his office chair was still spinning. Poetic, really. He fired me over email like I was garbage. And now, he was the one nobody would return calls from. Karma didn't just knock. It drop-kicked him into next week. As I stood in my new office watching the city lights flicker against the rainy Portland sky, I thought about everything that happened. One email, one funeral, one cold decision. That's all it took to turn loyalty into laser-focused destruction. And the best part? I wasn't even done yet, not by a long shot. By the start of the 2nd month, it was open season on Northway Freight. Word got out, fast and ugly. Nick Hall, former Golden Boy, wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. And Northway? They were bleeding out in broad daylight. Industry. Gossip spread like wildfire. Vendors pulled contracts. Job candidates ghosted their recruiters. Clients kept defecting one after another, like rats from a sinking ship. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about what Pete Crane's betrayal represented. If Northway could nuke a loyal manager for attending his father's funeral, what hope did anyone else have? Nobody wanted to be the next Nick Hall. And nobody wanted to be the last sucker holding a contract with a dying company. Meanwhile, at Ironclad, life was good. Rick called me into his office one rainy Thursday. He had a wicked grin on his face. "You busy next week?" he asked. "Depends," I said. "You planning another hostile takeover?" Rick laughed. "Something better. Meridian Freight's annual logistics summit. Big players. Open bar. And Northway's C-suite clowns will be there, looking like they just got pantsed in front of the whole industry. My kind of party." He slid me an invite across the desk. Keynote speaker? None other than Paula Winters, Northway's vice president of operations, the one who had to clean up Pete's disaster. This was going to be fun. When I showed up at the summit, it was like walking into a lion's den, if all the lions had already been beaten with sticks. Northway's booth was tucked in the back corner like some shameful afterthought. Their reps looked exhausted, their smiles barely glued on. Meanwhile, Ironclad's booth, front and center, big, bold displays, client logos flashing across sleek monitors, my team buzzing like a well-oiled machine, fielding new leads like candy at Halloween. It was like playing chess against someone who thought they were still playing checkers. And then, there she was, Paula Winters, storming across the conference floor toward me. If looks could kill, I'd have been vaporized on the spot. She forced a smile and extended her hand. "Nick, congratulations. I see you're doing well." "Appreciate it," I said smoothly, shaking her hand. "You guys hanging in there?" A muscle twitched in her jaw. "We're adapting." "Good. Adaptation's important," I said, loading my words with just enough poison to make her flinch. She dropped her voice. "You made your point, Hall. Maybe it's time to let this go before it gets uglier." I leaned in slightly, keeping my smile intact. "Paula, I didn't make it ugly. Your boy Pete did when he fired me like I was a broken office chair." I stepped back, voice still casual. "I'm just here for the shrimp cocktails." Later that afternoon, things got even sweeter. I bumped into an old client rep from Henderson Freight. After a few drinks, he leaned close and whispered, "You know, Paula tried to float a rumor that you stole company data when you left." I laughed out loud, hard enough to draw stares. Of course they tried to smear me. When you can't beat someone, you try to bury them. Problem was, I didn't steal a thing. Didn't have to. I was the data, the clients, the knowledge. Everything that made Northway's Northwest Division run was sitting right here in my head. And now, in Ironclad's playbook. Good luck replicating that with Pete's leftover cronies. By the summit's end, we'd landed 3 new contracts. Each one bigger than the last. Each one poached clean from under Northway's twitching nose. The cherry on top? One of the conference sponsors, a heavy-hitter consulting firm, offered to feature Ironclad's rapid growth case study in an upcoming industry white paper. Guess who they wanted to interview for it? Me. You couldn't script it better. Meanwhile, back at Northway HQ, the walls were caving in. Casey kept me updated in hushed, gleeful texts. 2 more clients dropped this week. Pete officially fired. Paula on thin ice. Rumor is corporates considering selling the whole Northwest operation for pennies. The empire Pete thought he ruled. Dust, ash, memories, and the funniest part? They did it to themselves. No lawsuits, no threats, no sabotage, just their own arrogance eating them alive from the inside out. One night, after a brutal but satisfying 14-hour day, I was driving home when my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I usually ignored those, but something told me to pick up. "Nick?" The voice on the other end cracked. It was Pete Crane. For a second I said nothing, just listened to him breathe, desperate and pathetic. I just wanted to say," he stammered. "Things got out of hand. I shouldn't have." I cut him off. "You fired me for going to my dad's funeral, Pete. Save your breath." Silence on the line, then a hollow whisper. "I lost everything." I stared out at the rain-slick streets, feeling nothing. No pity. No satisfaction. Just cold, clean detachment. "You didn't lose everything, Pete," I said quietly. "You threw it away." I hung up, blocked the number, rolled down the window and let the cold air wash over me. Freedom smelled a hell of a lot better than fear. And I knew deep down that the best part was still coming. Because karma doesn't do overnight shipping. It takes its sweet, brutal time. And when it finally arrives, it's heavy enough to flatten everything in its path. By the start of month 3, Northway wasn't just struggling. It was officially in free fall. Rumors swirled through the logistics world like smoke after a bomb blast. Vendors pulled out. Recruiters stopped returning calls. And Paula Winters? She was hanging on to her VP title by the fingernails, smiling through gritted teeth at every industry event, like a pageant queen on the verge of screaming. I barely had to lift a finger. The momentum was a living, breathing thing now, devouring. Everything Northway built, and at Ironclad, we were winning. Big Rick called an all-hands meeting that Friday, the excitement practically buzzing off him. When I walked into the conference room, the energy was electric. My team, my new hires, fresh faces hungry for blood. "You did it, Nick," Rick said, slapping a hand on my shoulder. "West Coast Division's revenue is up 34%. Henderson Freight named us their exclusive carrier for 2025. You're a goddamn miracle worker." I shrugged, trying not to grin like a lunatic. It's easy when you hire people who actually want to work. Everyone laughed. But deep down, I knew. The truth, it wasn't about working harder. It was about building a place where people were treated like humans, not expendable office furniture. Meanwhile, Paula was still fighting ghosts over at Northway. Casey kept the updates coming, every text more ridiculous than the last. Another 12 employees laid off. Rumor? Meridian Freight might buy Northway's leftovers. Pete sighting at a dive bar downtown, looks rough. Couldn't have scripted it better if I tried. Northway wasn't just dying. It was rotting from the inside out, one bad decision at a time. And then came the twist I didn't see coming. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Rick barged into my office without knocking. "You're not going to believe this," he said, dropping a folder onto my desk. I flipped it open. Inside was a merger offer from Meridian Freight, the same behemoth rumored to be circling Northway like vultures. They weren't just looking to buy Northway's scraps. They wanted to acquire Ironclad's Northwest Division too. I sat back, stunned. "Why the hell would they want us?" Rick grinned. "Because you're kicking everyone's ass. Because half the clients you stole used to belong to Meridian before they defected to Northway, and then to us. They want to control the bleeding." It was almost funny. The very company Northway prayed would save them now wanted me and the team Pete threw away like junk mail. The offer was good, real good, big buyout, massive bonuses, full leadership autonomy if I agreed to stay on post-merger. Rick leaned in. "It's your call, Nick. If you walk, I walk. But this is generational. Money, man." I spent that night pacing my apartment, the city lights smearing across the rain-streaked windows. It was tempting. Hell, it was more than tempting. It was everything I had fought for on a silver platter. The payday, the power, the legacy. But something gnawed at me. Would merging with Meridian feel like victory? Or would it feel like becoming the very thing I swore to destroy? I didn't want to be another cog in a giant machine. I didn't want to answer to people who only saw numbers on spreadsheets instead of faces at desks. I wanted more. I wanted to build something bigger than revenge, something real, something permanent. So the next morning, I called Rick into my office, told him my decision. "We're not selling," I said simply. Rick just stared for a second. Then a slow, proud smile spread across his face. "Goddamn right we're not." We shook on it. No lawyers, no contracts. Just two guys who remembered why they started this war in the first place. We weren't building a company to flip it like a cheap house. We were building an empire. And as if the universe approved, the hits kept coming for Northway. By the end of that week, Meridian pulled out of talks with them completely. Their biggest client, Hensley Logistics, jumped ship to Ironclad. Their credit line got slashed. Their stock price plummeted by 40% in 2 days. And Paula, forced to resign to pursue new opportunities. Translation: escorted, out with a box of sad office plants and her pride in shreds, Northway Freight officially announced restructuring 2 weeks later. A pretty way of saying, we're broke, scared, and desperately trying not to close the doors before Christmas. Couldn't have happened to a nicer bunch. Meanwhile, Ironclad kept growing. We expanded into Seattle, Spokane, and Sacramento. We started poaching managers from rival firms before they even knew we existed. Clients lined up for meetings. Industry. Blogs called us the Freight Revolution and the blueprint for employee-first logistics. I knew my old coworkers at Northway were watching. I knew Pete, wherever he was, probably heard the rumors. Nick Hall, the guy he fired like yesterday's trash, was now the name everyone wanted on their team. Poetic, isn't it? One cold, heartless email. One heartless decision. It didn't just end my time at Northway. It ended Northway itself. But I wasn't gloating. Not anymore. Because I realized something important. Revenge isn't burning down the place that hurt you. Revenge is building something so bright they have to squint to even look at it. Something they can never touch again, and we were just getting started. 6 months later, the landscape was unrecognizable. Northway Freight, gone. dissolved in a messy pile of lawsuits, debt, and a reputation so toxic even the temp agencies wouldn't touch them. Ironclad? We were a juggernaut. Our name was everywhere. The new gold standard in logistics. Clients didn't just want our services, they wanted our culture, our people, our story. They wanted in on the revolution we started without even meaning to. I stood in the glass-walled conference room of our new Portland headquarters, staring out at the city that once felt like it was grinding me down. Now, it felt like mine. Like I had planted a flag on top of a mountain nobody thought I could climb. Rick walked in, 2 beers in hand, like he always did when something big was brewing. He tossed me one. To us, he said simply. I clinked bottles with him. To all the people who told us we couldn't. That afternoon we had a visitor. Someone I didn't expect. Barbara Gray, Northway's old head of HR, the one who handed my termination paperwork like she was passing a death sentence. She looked different now. Worn down, smaller somehow, like life had taken a few swings and connected hard. She asked for a few minutes. Rick gave me a look, your call, and walked out, leaving us alone. Barbara sat across from me, fidgeting with a cheap handbag. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she said, voice thin. I should have said something, should have pushed back. What they did to you, it wasn't right. I didn't say anything, just waited. Let the silence stretch and wrap around her like a vice. She swallowed hard. I lost my job too, after the collapse. Nobody wants to hire someone who was part of that mess. Another pause. A look, pleading, desperate. I was wondering if Ironclad is hiring? For a second I actually felt a flicker of sympathy, but then I thought about sitting alone in that HR office 6 months ago, my world crumbling because a company valued quarterly reports more than a human life. I thought about my father's funeral, the rain on the coffin, the emptiness of coming back to a job that saw me as nothing but missed deadlines. I leaned back, steepling my fingers. Barbara, I believe in second chances. Her face lit up, eyes wide with hope, but not for everyone. I stood up, meeting over, pointing her to the door without a word. It wasn't anger, it wasn't revenge, it was just closure. She left without another word, and I didn't watch her go. Weeks later I got a letter in the mail, from Pete Crane, handwritten, pages and pages of excuses, apologies, self-pity. I read the first line. I wasn't myself back then. Stopped right there, tore it up, dropped it in the trash. Some people think closure is about confrontation, about long conversations and heartfelt forgiveness. Nah, sometimes closure is just realizing the door's locked, the building's condemned, and you're already halfway to something better. Our first anniversary at Ironclad was a full-blown event. Food trucks in the parking lot, live band, free beer. Rick got on stage, beer in one hand, mic in the other, and bellowed. 1 year ago, we were nobodies. Today we are the name in this industry, and it's because we bet on each other. Because we built something that no company politics, no bad bosses, no corporate bullshit could tear down. The crowd roared. My team, my family lifted their bottles in the air, chanting, "Nick, Nick, Nick." I laughed so hard I almost dropped my drink. If you told me a year ago that I'd go from being fired in an email to standing here, leading a freight empire, I would have thought you were nuts. But here we were, and we were just getting started. Late that night, after the party died down, I stood alone on the rooftop, the cool breeze slicing through the warm summer air. Portland glittered around me, alive, awake. My phone buzzed. Another client confirmation. Mail, another deal, another win. I tucked it back into my pocket without even reading it, smiled up at the stars. The river moves, but the rocks stay steady, my dad used to say. I finally understood what he meant. Life will always churn, crash, roar with change. Jobs will come and go, people will betray you, plans will burn. But if you know who you are, if you hold steady like the rocks, you survive, you thrive. You build something so strong, so bright, that even the river can't sweep it away. And maybe, just maybe, you end up standing on the rooftop of your own empire, laughing into the night, while the river rushes uselessly past your feet. That's the end of today's story. Did things turn out the way you thought, or were there some surprises along the way? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you haven't joined the community yet, now's the perfect time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're always the first to catch new stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.